It's almost that time again. To reclaim glory and respect amongst your coworkers, we play to win fantasy football. It can make competitive office infrastructure, blue-collar weekday conversation, and a little something extra to watch during the regular season of the NFL. Football has become the most popular sport in America, therefore the most popular fantasy league around, and the most popular sports gambling destination. But how did fantasy football even happen? It wasn't just created in an IBM closet somewhere. The origin story of fantasy football dates back to 1962. Bill Winkenbach was a businessman in Oakland, California. He was in a hotel in New York City with Raiders public relations Bill Tunnell and Oakland newspaper reporter Scotty Sterling. In this hotel room, they developed the rules for fantasy football. The league was called the Greater Oakland Professional Pigskin Prognosticators League, the GOPL. The first fantasy draft took place in Winkenbach's home in August of 1963. The league had 8 members, most of them being pro football journalists. The scoring system for the GOPL was based on real-life scoring in the games. 25 points for a touchdown pass, rush, or reception, 25 for a field goal, 10 for a PAT, and 200 for a kickoff, punt, or interception return. If you had a great field goal kicker or special teams unit, you were unstoppable in the GOPL. 1969, the year of Woodstock. It was also the first time one of the original creators of the GOPL took it to a sports bar. Andy Muselimus brought it to his favorite sports bar, the King's X. This took the idea of fantasy football public and competed with the weekly trivia contest they would host. Early forms of fantasy football took a while to spread, but found help through various universities and colleges. Being the commissioner of the league then was about the equivalent of being the dungeon master in Dungeons & Dragons. In 1985, Grandstand Sports Services launched fantasy football leagues online through Q-Link, which we know today as AOL. 1987 brought the first fantasy football magazine to the spotlight. 1990 brought the game to newspapers and a competition called Pigskin Playoffs. They used to have a toll-free number you would call in the newspaper to make your selections through 4-digit codes. Each week's highest scoring participant would win a trip to Hawaii. Damn! 1997 was when the modern internet began to start playing its hand in the formation of fantasy football. CBS launched the first major online competition, but shortly after, everybody started creating them. Yahoo stood out from the rest because they made having a league free to play. According to the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association, 59.3 million people played fantasy football as of 2017. We have come a long way from smoking pipes and cigars in our commissioner's basement to now playing online for free. Here are some of the fun demographic numbers the research team pulled. As of 2019, 81% of fantasy football players were male, 67% were employed full-time, 47% made more than $75,000 a year, and 51.5% of those men were unmarried. And I know what you're thinking. What does it take to be one of those men in the 47% that makes $75,000 a year? I don't know, it ain't this, if you're curious, it's not this thing. Money won't solve all my problems, but it'll solve 99% of them. Now let's talk about the effects from fantasy football. Casinos, FanDuel, DraftKings, and all those other sports betting apps looked at the possibility to generate incredible amounts of ad revenue. It is estimated that 2 to 5 billion, with a B, billion is generated annually online in fantasy football. That is not including some sport betting apps that take 10% right off the top as your entry fee to play. Impact on the American workplace estimated 6.5 to 17 billion lost in productivity due to fantasy football being played in the workplace. 7.5 million Americans also play fantasy football weekly at work during the season. Now, if you're not putting money on it, is it considered gambling? Montana prohibits online fantasy sports of any kind. Louisiana and Arizona recently lifted online fantasy betting in 2021. And in 2023, 33 US states have legal sports betting without penalty, while 45 states allow fantasy sports to be played. It is easier to do sports betting online in this country than actual physical gambling. If you've ever wondered why there's a bunch of sports betting app commercials and advertisements all over the place, now you know the answer. Now, the big question that you may have heard or seen discussed when online sports betting apps became very popular, does this affect being a fan? Obviously, to all of us that play fantasy football, we would say no. We play for fun. Whether in the workplace or in an online league, it is something fun to keep track of while watching football. I would make that argument for any sport that you watch at the professional level. All of these different leagues allow you to dive deeper into the numbers of the game that you want to watch. But what about the players in the NFL? Does this affect play? Have players thrown games before for a large sum of money? Have refs made wrong calls on purpose? All good questions. Some NFL players think it is bad for the game, while others think it is great for the game. Some NFL players play in their own leagues for fun. There are restrictions as far as we know, otherwise this would be considered a form of inside trading. And there's a history of many people from many different professional sports that have been caught sports betting for prizes or money. You do have the NFL Players Association. They are supposed to protect the rights of the players. They are the reason you can play Madden, wear names and numbers on your jerseys, and allow players to be used online in fantasy leagues. Do you feel like a caged animal on the field? You make a lot of money as this caged animal on the field, but do you feel like that? To conclude, this is all in good fun. For me at least. In some leagues you do throw down a fair amount of money. Obviously these gambling apps have you throw down money every week. I believe this is another fun layer to sitting at home and watching a game in the winter when it's too cold outside for baseball. I personally believe it is also good for any game when you have something in place that allows you to follow the sport closer and have friendly competition. It is also probably nice to be in that 47% of males that make $75,000 a year.